Right, so as many of you might be aware, Suella Braverman's prison ship, still being peddled as a migrant housing facility, has arrived in our waters because not only is the infernal thing costing us £20,000 a day in running costs, and because we're leasing it, we haven't bought it, there will be the cost of the agreement to borrow it too, so how much is that? We don't know. Not only all of that, but we actually have to fix it up ourselves as well. I'm sure you may have seen video clips on the TV news and social media of this ship arriving in Cornwall, headed to be repaired in Falmouth. But here's a bit of footage you likely won't have seen that I've kindly been given permission to use. Rather a good video short, I thought. Now, I have to confess, those surroundings are rather familiar to me personally. The company, A&P Falmouth, is where I served my apprenticeship as a fabricator and welder, slicing bits out of ships and sticking bits back in as you do. The commentary about the work A&P does, military refits of Royal Fleet auxiliary ships and ferry contracts with the likes of P&O, their bread and butter work. And of course, Port Pendennis shipyard is just next door, which do build luxury yachts and the like for the super rich. And that familiarity meant that when I actually saw that piece of crap in the dry dock in that piece of film, number 2 dock, which sits between A&P and Port Pendennis, I was rather shocked at just how small it really is. Because the way it was filmed by the mainstream media, it gave the impression of the scale of this thing is like something like a cargo ship, something on that scale. It's broadly that shape, so appeared deceptively large on the TV. Now, that's the largest dry dock down there in Falmouth. That's it, sat in there, right in the middle, and this thing doesn't even come all the way up the sides. Now, I've walked up and down that dry dock bottom, to top, more times than I can count, and this thing, depthwise, doesn't even quite make the top of the sides in height, and that's whilst it's perched on blocks. The number 2 is 60, 70 feet deep at a guess, there or thereabouts. So I looked the ship up, the Bibby Stockholm as it's called, piece of shit, seems to fit it better, to get an idea of its measurements. And bottom of keel, the very bottom of the ship to its highest point, is just 17.1 meters. That's 56 feet. Now, bear in mind, on that footage, the keel is sat on the blocks. There's quite a gap between the blocks and the bow of the ship, and the gap, so that's a fair old chunk of that height taken out. And then there's that barge deck, the gap to keep the accommodation well above the waterline, before we finally look at the accommodation part of the ship itself. So 3 stories of accommodation block can be more than 25 to 30 feet maximum. That might be erring on the generous side of things, given the highest point is probably a mast of some sort somewhere along its length. Lengthwise, it is all of 300 feet long, this ship, which is partly why it looks so small in the dry dock. It's actually parked right in the middle of the dry dock there, like I said. Itself, the dry dock is over 900 feet long, so you could nigh on fit 3 of these things in there all at once. A large P&O ferry, which substantially does fill that dry dock, is pretty much big enough to eat that thing. Would you want to live on one of those? Well, apparently over 500 people can live on this. Of course, our mainstream media are selling this thing as luxurious with some lovely photos. The Metro ran a piece saying, inside the floating barge set to house 500 asylum seekers. And they actually used promotional interior images provided by the owners of the Bibby Stockholm themselves. So that's all very impartial, isn't it? If the ship looks like that, why does it need dry docking before it heads off elsewhere for a refurb? It should also be pointed out, but to get this contract, A&P will have had to have bidded for the work. Repair contracts are always put out to tender. I really am Damned if I would want to work on it, knowing what its purpose is. A prison ship for people who have fled horrors I have no capacity to contemplate. What a thing to greet you when you think you've reached safety to claim asylum. A prison barge before being packed off to Rwanda. It's a small boat. It's going to be cramped, claustrophobic, with a massive backlog of asylum applications to deal with. God knows how long people are going to be stuck on board the blasted thing. Still, it has its supporters, of course, always does. A video like this is like a call to them asking for a useful idiot, and along they come at the first ring. Oh, but they can come and go as they please, they say. It'll be so nice for them. I bet our homeless would love to sleep there. They should have stayed in France. Maybe you should take them in instead, Damo, if you don't like it. Well, why is the choice between a prison barge and my sofa the only options, then? Honestly, the replies from sympathy-deficient whingers to this video so far write themselves. I know they're coming, as they always do. All the same tired, racist tropes from the empathy-deficient idiot right wing. The sort of people who vote Tory, or worse. The very people happy to spend millions in public money to appease racist, fascistic tendencies by shelling out on a boat just to borrow it and arranging deportation to Africa instead of the much cheaper, much more sane and humane option of just negotiating a returns policy with the EU. Homeless people deserve a home, of course they do. Most of ours are stuck in B&Bs or hotels or travel lodges, exactly like many asylum seekers are. Perhaps if some people weren't so determined not to be burdened by the need to think, you might realise just how callous, cruel and stupid some of you sound. And if you think I'm holding back, you're right. And it's so exhausting I might need to take a nap after I've made this video, because such dismissive, horrid attitudes just go to show there's nothing great about Britain with people such as this in it. If you don't like it, then leave, Lendamo. I can already hear your brain cells straining to come out with that nugget of originality, aping 30p Lee Anderson, which shouldn't be an aspiration to attend to. But then you can only expect so much from people with delusions of adequacy, can't you? But my presence here, therefore, clearly annoys you, and that does make me smile. If these people have the freedom to come and go as they please, ultimately, then that's great. But will it be safe for them? Will they be welcome? The boat is due to be moored off Dorset, and the local Tory MP is already whipping up hatred and objection. A chap called Richard Drax, a man whose family wealth was built off the back of the slave trade, so you'd think a boatload of foreigners off his shores would delight him. But with the welcome people have had in this country having arrived here seeking asylum already, with the attacks on hotels, if I were on that boat, I'd figure I'm best off staying on it. The ship is a symbol of absolute shame, frankly. That it's in my backyard right now is sickening. That it's here at all should sicken anyone with an ounce of humanity. Thanks for watching. If you appreciated this video, please do hit like and subscribe. Leave a comment and hit the notification bell too, so you don't miss the next one. Also, look out for me on social media and other interesting stuff by clicking on the Linktree link in the comments below. And I will see you next time. Cheers, folks.